evening and welcome to ILOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 278th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studios of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Barry Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show. Who gives a shit that it took me 2 times to get it started? Because we're going to have fun anyway. I'm so excited to have my guest of honor to speak with tonight. We're going to talk about an incredible project and incredible projects that have already taken place by this astute individual and his partner who couldn't be with us tonight, but he's going to be with us in spirit. So we're going to have a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad that you are here with us tonight, and we want to get things rolling. But before we do, and before I get to formal introductions of our guests of honor, we do have to thank the people that make this show possible, and that, of course, is our sponsors. And tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate has announced today, last month, that they have released the 2023 release of the limited edition Liga Privada Unico Series Pancetta, a cigar exclusive to the 2 Liga Privada lounges, Wooden Indian Tobacco Shop in Havertown, Pennsylvania, and Barrister Cigars in Union, New Jersey. The Pancetta will be available, was available starting on December 13th. The Liga Privada Unico Series Pancetta is the union of 2 renowned Liga Privada blends, the T52 and, of course, the Liga Privada Unico Feral Flying Pig. Featuring a Connecticut stock cut and cured Habano Kappa, the cigar starts with a blast of spice, hearty aroma, leaving the enthusiast on the complex journey through Liga Landia. A bold Brazilian Matafita binder and powerful filler leaves from Nicaragua and Honduras were selected specifically to add raw but might to this blend. The binder and filler leaves are the very same that go into the Liga Privada Unico Feral Flying Pig. These majestic tobaccos are skillfully rolled into a 4 3/4 by 50 Bellicoso, identified by a 2023 release footband to make sure you have an unforgettable smoking experience. So check out Barrister Cigars and Woodian Tobacco Shop for this iconic cigar from our good friends at Drew Estate. And welcome, everyone. This is our 278th take. Without further ado, let's get to introductions of our guest of honor, who, of course, is appearing tonight, sponsored by United Cigars. Smoke one today and start living United. Mr. Jesse Mariut of Hand Rolled. Jesse, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
It only took 2 times, so hey, we're doing good. We're doing good. It's fantastic.
That was special. I liked watching that. Yeah, that was fun.
Oh man, what a day. But good stuff. I got coffee. I've got my exuberance back, so this is fantastic. I'm so excited to have you back on the show, Jesse. Of course, your partner Steve Garabine couldn't be with us tonight, Of course he's with us in spirit. We wish him all the best and everything, and we'll definitely get you guys back together another time together. But I'm so excited to have you. So thank you so much for making some time for me this evening.
Hey, man, thanks for having us. This is fun. This has been almost 4 years in the making since the last one.
I can't believe it's been that long. I looked that up. I just could not believe it. I was like, that's insane. And I was late to the game too. I was late having you guys on because the original documentary had just released to Netflix at that point, right? And so
we're not on Netflix. Netflix gave us a hard no twice.
Okay.
It was the pandemic, like, kind of caused a resurgence with the documentary is what happened.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I was late to the game though, but I had seen it. I was like the first person to buy it on Prime, and I watched it like 27 times up to that point, and I've watched it. So I've watched it many more times since.
That's awesome, man. Thank you.
I was actually having a conversation today about it, and I was like getting people excited about it that haven't even got, like, they're not even into cigars. They're like, that sounds incredibly interesting. I was like, it really is. You need to watch it. It's incredibly well made. So, so exciting. I mean, there are a couple of things we have to kind of get started here, Jesse. I mean, first of all, just kind of kicking things off here. I remember we kind of talked. I think we've kind of talked about this before, maybe just a little bit in background and everything. But I know we talked about how you're a linguist. You actually speak multiple languages, but I didn't realize you were a biology major in college at Wright State, right? Is that right? You were a biology major? So were you like pre-med?
First of all, how?
I do good research, man. You're not the only person who's good at his job, I mean, come on.
That's shocking. I did pre-med for 1 year, exactly 1 year.
Okay.
So that's shocking, but yeah, you're right.
So pre-med for 1 year, and then decided fuck that, I'm going to make movies and make documentaries. Or like, where did that happen? Like, how do we go from a potential doctor to making
Potential.
incredible documentaries here?
I didn't get far. 1 year is not enough to say potential, but it's I don't know. I got into business early, so my ex-wife and I got into owning businesses, and then we just started like working in the workforce early on. And I started working in film about 14 years ago with Steve, so that was kind of the catalyst of that. But yeah, college just wasn't for me really early on. I found that out really quickly.
Oh man. I I knew quite a few pre-meds in my freshman year of college, and I knew significantly less my sophomore year of college. So I mean, I know
Yeah,
it's a hard beat. But I mean,
yeah.
that's um, man. Man, like from where you started to where you ended up, and what a really cool journey. I mean, just like academically, like speaking, so I think that's really cool. But yeah, so was the pre-med done at Wright State? Did you finish at Wright State with another major or?
No, I stopped after a year. After a year, I decided college just wasn't for me. Came back to California. I had family in Ohio, so that's why I went to Ohio. I lived in California. I was born and raised in California, but my parents were Romanian, as you said earlier. So, and Steve's parents the same. So Steve and I both speak Romanian fluently. But I decided college wasn't for me. Steve finished with a degree at UC Davis here in California. But yeah, we just I just decided early on that man, the college just wasn't the route for me. So I got heavy into businesses when I was young, and then just kind of worked my way up the ladder that way. But yeah, no, I have 0 degrees to my name.
Hey, you know what? It's call college is one of those interesting things. Like I think like the education that you got outside of college is in a lot of ways is probably a lot better than the education I got. Like, well, because I mean,
Hey man,
I'm
school of
using it
hard
now.
knocks.
Well, yeah, I'm using it now. Like I was a sports broadcasting major.
Sure.
That's not my day job, by the way. I do this for fun, and
Yeah.
this is podcasting. Like this is the only time I've ever used my major, really. Like, I'm good at
No, I
speaking,
hear you.
so that's about it. But
Steve's a political
yeah, I was
science
gonna say
major.
poli sci, right? UC Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
UC
crazy.
Davis, yeah. So and we're just in film. So it's we both kind of chased different dreams shortly after.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting where people end up or from where they start. Some people like they what they want to be, and like that's just so rare. Like, but there's
Yeah.
and that's cool too. Like, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
I think it's really cool to start someplace and then end up someplace completely different, which is really
Well,
unique.
what happened for me specifically is I bought a camera when my first daughter when my ex was pregnant with our first daughter. I bought a camera and I said, "Yo, I'm gonna take pictures." Okay, I wanted a nicer camera for the first kid, and I want to get into photography a little bit to kind of pay back for the camera and like make a little bit of money off of this camera that I just invested. I think it was like 600 at the time, but it was a lot of
Oh
money at the
God,
time.
it's a monster, man.
Steve convinced me, yeah, but at the time DSLRs were being used for video. So
Right.
the 5D Mark II just came out from Canon, and people were using that for video because it was fantastic for video. Steve convinced me to shoot a wedding together with it for a friend of ours, and then fast forward 14 years, I've been shooting video ever since. So we kind of progressed slowly that way. I think we've done like 350 weddings so far, and then slowly switched from weddings to commercial videography, which eventually switched us over to documentary videography, and then so on and so forth, narrative film and everything else.
That's just an interesting progression too. Like I went from
Yeah,
wedding photographer to making documentaries too. Like because I think, but it like not to connect the dots too far from each other, but I think that's this might just be the romantic in me, but like that's not too far fetched. Like you're telling a story when you're
no,
doing weddings and stuff. Like you're telling a story. It's
yeah,
much more abbreviated and it's much more like uh, one moment captured in time as opposed to many. But I mean, you're telling a
yeah,
story one way or another.
yeah. That's the way we like to describe ourselves as storytellers. Whether it's a 15-second commercial or a full wedding, videography shoot, or the documentary. It's all storytelling for us. And that's what we love to do.
So interesting. Okay, cool. Well, Jesse,
Mhm.
I can see that you're already smoking. I would like to join you if it's all right. And
Please do.
I've got four cigars here, and it has become a tradition here on Ellis from our takes is my guest always picks the cigar. So I have four
Okay.
choices for you. So we're gonna go. I have a Brick House from J.C. Newman in the Tubo.
Okay.
I have a Diamond Crown Maximus Robusto number 5.
Okay.
Another JC New. They're all JC Newman cigars. I don't know why I'm saying this, and there's a reason for that, obviously. Um, the El Baton Bellicoso, the 5x56, and
Okay.
the double Robusto, the American.
You
So
got to go American.
sounds good, fantastic. I was hoping you'd pick
There it
that.
is.
I love
Yeah.
I do love the Maximus, man. I'm a huge Maximus fan. Um, I really enjoy that cigar. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Um the reblend on the El Baton is interesting too. I remember smoking a lot of the original back in the day, which was
I,
also a
I
tasty
haven't
cigar.
had the Elbaton yet, but the Diamond Crown is definitely a favorite, and the America is a favorite of mine. In fact, Drew gave us one of his, or a couple of his, um, what are they called? Oh my God, I'm blanking. The American,
The Angel Cuesta
I'm blanking.
or
No, I'm blanking on it. He gave us a couple of special ones that are not for sale, that are kind of his private stash,
oh, okay,
and I
cool.
fell extra in love with the American. But yeah, it's a great cigar. You're doing a great justice there.
You were I mean last time we talked a little bit about this. You were more of like I mean you've smoked stuff from the mid Dominican and stuff like that, but you were you were smoking pretty heavily Nicaraguan stuff at the time, just because like of
I still do.
all
I,
yeah.
I still prefer Nicaraguan tobacco. I love the spice on the front end, the sweet on the back end. I'm still a big fan of the Nicaraguan tobacco. I think that's stuck with me for the last maybe 5 6 years.
Yeah. What are you smoking tonight?
Tonight I'm smoking an LFD. Funny enough, the Solus from
Oh, nice.
LFD.
All right. Oh,
Yeah,
that's such a good
I
cigar.
picked up a box this week. It's my first time smoking it this week. I picked up a box. Steve and I opened the box up this week with some friends, and I've been pleasantly surprised. It's been a great cigar.
Oh,
So I decided to
they're
smoke one tonight.
fantastic. They're nice.
Yeah.
Since you like Nicaraguan cigars so much, it's a cigar from that company that it's not Nicaragua. They're manufactured in the DR, obviously, but the chapter ones are really really strong, like beautifully flavored. Like I think that would totally fit into your wheelhouse. So if you want to grab, I don't know if you've ever had one. You may or may not have had one already, but
Oh, I haven't.
yeah,
I'll check it out.
the four chapter ones, they're fantastic. Good stuff. Good stuff. Um, well, that will kind of dive us into tonight's major point, which is always brought to you by the people. Yes, cigar people, people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is. But behind the fun is a motivation for service, a motivation for giving back. From the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Phoebe Cousins, Protocol has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work has been and always will be about. Power of the P, Protocol Cigars. So Jesse, wanted to go back a little bit at a time with just kind of a recap on the success. Like we talked a little bit about it. You said you guys have gotten rejected the hard no from Netflix a couple of times, but the original hand roll has been the documentary that you guys released a few years ago has just been phenomenally successful. And I think I don't want to I don't want to just like throw this in as a throwaway comment. So I want to kick it off at the top here. I think a large part, the reason why the cigar industry has achieved so much victory was a lot of the awareness that your work brought. I think it really did bring a lot of awareness to the issue at hand. And I think that's why there's a lot of hard work in other avenues. I don't want to say it was the reason, but I think it did its job. It brought a lot of awareness to the issues at hand. So, I mean, I wanted to congratulate you on that and
Thank you.
and
That's
give
high
you all the
praise.
credit.
That's high praise. That's yeah. I mean, my God, dude, that's high praise because the only thing we wanted to do with the documentary is, aside from us being cigar lovers, and this was our love letter to the cigar industry, it was to bring awareness to the industry and put a human face to the industry. So that's I love that you said that. It's exactly what we were out to achieve with the first documentary.
I look back at a like an old video of yours that I guess Steve was filming, and you actually were doing an interview of Nick Perdomo at the time it was the IP Cigar Trade Show. This is before I think you guys even started filming.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, you guys were really kind of paving the way, and really, I mean, it wasn't like, hey, let's make a documentary about cigars. Like there were years of prep work that went into it before actually even rolling on stuff that you were actually going to even use, which is just
So
insane.
what you saw that interview was in 2016 as our first time at IPCPR, which is now PCA, as you said. That was us meeting everybody in the industry and trying to get interviews and trying to like just build relationships with people in the industry. And our first interview with Nick Perdomo, who ended up being the first company we actually ended up like meeting with and filming with in Nicaragua. It was our gateway into the industry. We ended up filming an interview with Claudio Seguro and Roberto Lopez. Right before that, Claudio was with Mombacho and Roberto was with Santiago Cigars. We shot an interview with them first, but then we spent 3 days with Nick Perdomo. We shot his super impactful interview, which made the documentary. But that was us basically bootstraps, trying to pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, trying to get interviews, anything that we could.
Mhm.
And we went into Nicaragua with only Nick Perdomo's interview in the like ready to go, booked, and then everything else was just up for grabs. We ended up shooting something like 5 or 6 interviews that month because we were there for 22 days. But
Insane.
yeah, that was super early, super early on, and we were trying to shoot content for our Instagram. So we would sit down with Nick Perdomo or Padron, Jorge Padron, or whoever else, and just try to shoot some bullshit questions that we can come up with on the fly. I'm horrible on camera with like these types of interview situations, but I'm slightly better than Steve, so I ended up being the one on camera. But we're just trying to shoot anything to get like content and interest in what we're trying to do in the documentaries.
I've always found documentaries interesting because I've done a lot of work for my day job where they'll use me at conferences to do interviews to get like testimonials and
Yeah,
things like that. And they usually have me off camera. And there's a series of different styles. There's the style of, hey, I'm reading you a question, but I'm not really, there's not a person asking, a person's just talking into a camera.
yeah,
And then there is conversational, kind of like what we're doing here today, where I get a little bit more, can get a little bit more off topic, so to speak, a little bit with, well, while keeping it relational. Um, but it's interesting, like in a documentary, like how it's just like the talking head talking about whatever. So you've asked the question or prompted the conversation, and you know it's all going on in the background. But what I've always found is a really beautiful artistry of documentaries is how you and Steve and your team were able to piece together those answers into a really
yeah.
fluid and succinct way to where it makes sense in telling the story. Because I don't know if I could do that because like for me it's always about my question and my follow up and like I have this train of thought that I need to that I have and I'm getting to. Um, but yet you go back and you piece it all together to where it really makes sense, which is really I think that's where the artistry really comes into.
I got to give credit to Steve on that one because while I'm the face on our Instagram, Steve's the one that actually drives the interviews when we do the actual interviews. He's the one that does all the questioning and all that stuff. So Steve's really great at pulling information out of people and then seeing the bigger picture when it comes to the final film. And we'll sit down together. We'll come up with a game plan on what we're trying to do together. But Steve's got the vision on that in that sense, and he does a great job with it, especially during the interview process.
Yeah, I'm just totally throwing my hat in the ring on on a public platform just to say this, but like I would love like I hope one day when I have the opportunity to like work with you guys for just like a day or something to just be a part of that process. Cause I think I like it's incredibly fascinating for one. And two, I admire y'all's work. So that's not, I mean, that goes without saying,
Yeah.
but I think it's incredibly fascinating to do. And that's why I do what I do here is I love these conversations because I like to humanize the industry and the same vision that you had. I like talking to people about stuff other than what we're smoking. What the smoking is the byproduct of the conversation, not necessarily the focal point.
Of course.
So,
Of
um,
course.
which makes it, I don't know, which is just a goal of mine, and I think I've done a decent enough job. My audience finds it entertaining enough, at least. So, as I talk so well about myself here, but back to the project, I mean, how at this point, like the original hand roll project, where it's at, how it's being distributed, the views, you guys have probably gotten all the metrics, somewhere on it. I mean, how would you rate it? I mean, would you, from what you and Steve set out to do, would you say that it's successful? Was it very successful? Did it achieve what you wanted to? I mean,
I'll say this: we are very happy with the original documentary. We said from the jump that we wanted to put a human face in the industry, which we feel like we did. We've gotten at this point millions of views throughout the history, or not the history, the time that we've had hand rolled available on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, and now YouTube for free. We've gotten millions of views on it, which is amazing. Um, and what we hope to continue doing is continue telling people stories. So the documentary was a bird's eye view of, or hand rolled, excuse me, the original hand rolled was a bird's eye view of the industry and put a human face in the industry. And now we want to dive into and tell individual stories of the people of the industry, which we did with JC Newman and we're continuing to do now.
that's awesome. Yeah, I want to get into that's why for the audience who's been living under a rock, we're going to be talking a little bit about JC Newman. That's why I had JC Newman cigars for
Yeah,
Jesse to pick tonight. He picked the
perfect.
American, which I love. I just put these two things together when I was doing research on the show. You said I know you born and raised in California, but spent time in Ohio and stuff. That's where JC Newman started, was Ohio.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so I didn't know if there was a connection there, or was it like, again, you wanted to seek out and do these stories of these families and companies and everything like that. What made you guys go with JC Newman first? Was it just like logistical, or was it an actual like precise decision because of X, Y, and Z?
You know what? It was a happy accident, to quote Bob Ross. Uh, what happened in 2020 is we pushed hard to do these episodes, this follow up series, and we had a lot of people in line to do these episodes. But as we all know, when 2020 hit, all these restrictions hit because of COVID. So the JC Newman Cigar Company, they were the first ones to say, "Hey, we don't give a shit about what's going on with COVID. Like, oh, this is Florida. Come on in and film with us." And they're the ones that stuck. And so everybody else kind of fell through because countries shut down. We couldn't go to Nicaragua. We couldn't go to Dominican Republic. We couldn't go to Cuba anymore for a few months. So we just kind of went all in on JC Newman Cigar Company, and we stuck with them for the last 3 years as things opened up. But they were the ones that stuck around with us because they knew the importance of telling their story. They wanted other people to hear, or everybody to hear, their elaborate story and the fact that they're 4 generations into the game so far. And that's kind of how everything played out. So, and you know what? It could not have been a more perfect company because, as you know, I'm sure, and anybody else that's heard anything about anybody from JC Newman, they are the absolute nicest fucking people you've ever fucking met.
That's true.
And that's so true. It's hard to explain to people how nice the entire family is. And so it could not have been a better fit for the first episode.
Yeah, I reached out to Drew Newman to do. He's been on my show a couple of times. The first time, and I just reached out to him via email a couple of times. We finally connected. And I mean, the guy could not have been nicer. Didn't know me from a hole in the wall. Like I just like we were
Sure.
friends on Instagram, and he knew I had the podcast, obviously, and I introduced myself and everything, and just like and everything, and I just kind of went like totally the non-corporate way. I didn't start at the bottom. I went straight to the guy
Yeah.
and hit it off with him like I mean he was just sensational. I mean just a genuine sincere person and I mean
Well,
what a
let me put
huge
it this way
passion.
to you. On January 3rd of this year, they rented out a theater to play their episode for Tampa, for the city of Tampa. They made it free to everybody in Tampa that wanted to come see the episode. So it doesn't matter if you're into cigars, doesn't matter if you're into documentaries, whatever the case is. They said, yo, everybody in Tampa, come to this theater. We'll give you food, we'll give you cigars, come watch this movie. And this is our gift to Tampa. So that's how nice the entire family is. They
That's
wanted
it.
to just gift everything back to the city that they love. Yeah,
That's beautiful.
fantastic,
That's beautiful.
fantastic.
Not to take two steps back here, but like you know, you talked about how you guys did the bird's eye view of the industry and the story of it in the best way you could. I mean, it's a
Sure.
long fucking story, and for you guys to be able to condense it even to the amount of time that you did was pretty sensational. But the I guess the biggest question I had too with that was like, why was it important for you guys to take it a step further? Why was it important to part of your vision to tell the individual story? Why does that matter to you?
Well, anybody that knows the cigar industry knows that the story goes beyond just the cigar brand. If anybody, when you see the documentary, you see that the Fuentes and JC Newman, they started cigar charity or cigar family charity. You
Mhm.
see Padron has their own charity. You see all these other companies that are trying to impact and help out their community. So for us, it's important to not only tell the industry story, but also continue telling the stories of individuals because that's what makes up the bigger picture. It's not just hey, cigar smoking isn't the worst thing in the world for you. It's a handmade product.
Right.
It's the cigar industry is impacting the world as we know it. They're building roads, they're building sewer systems, they're building infrastructure. That's the story that needs to get out. They're helping out the kids in the community. That's the story that needs to get out. So for us, it's super important to tell those stories because that's what makes the cigar industry that we know and love human. That's what we need to tell. And it's multi-generational.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I mean,
mean, we're the Jason Newman Cigar Company is 4 generations today in the United States. What's more important than that? Like, what other industry do you know in the United States that's 4 generation family owned,
mhm.
currently operating with that family? I mean, good luck naming one.
Yeah.
So that's why that story needs to be told.
Yeah. I think I think to that point, like there's a much deeper rooted, like almost you don't like you said to your point, like you don't see that anymore. And it's like
Exactly.
at some point, and this is just a sad fact of just life and history. At some pact, even multi-generational businesses, there's going to be a generation that says that's it.
Yeah.
There's not going to be another. There's not going to be another. I mean, like Ford is probably another one, maybe. You know, like that's
Maybe.
one. Like, and that's it's probably about it. Like, I mean, even the Rockefellers aren't the Rockefellers anymore. You know, and like, I mean, those
Sure.
are some major American families like Kellogg's and J.P. Morgan and stuff like that. Their names are still around, but the families aren't involved with the business anymore. So like, yeah. I mean, I think it's important, like you said, to the story. I mean, I'm just a fan of stories anyway, so that's always going to be important to me. But I wanted to get your take on it. Um, and I wanted that to be shared with our audience. So the um I guess the other thing I wanted to kind of go back again, not to take two steps back here, but what did you learn from the bird's eye view that you knew exactly that this is how we're going to take this piece of thing that we learned and we're going to attack that's how we're going to attack these individual stories, if that
Well, when we
question made sense.
started, it does. When we started telling the story, and I'll have to share with you if I can find it, the original trailer to the movie because we shot one just as a just kind of trial and to get interest in the movie. What we originally started talking about was the FDA and what the FDA was doing back then with the regulation. But we realized as we were shooting the documentary, which took about 3 years to shoot the original hand rolled, we realized that the FDA was just a blip on the radar. It was just a blip in history. It's not the full story of the cigar industry. So what we had to shift then is telling the FDA. I think we spent like about 10 minutes talking about FDA regulations and what they're kind of doing in the documentary, and we touched on a little bit on that in the Jason Newman episode because Drew's so involved on Capitol Hill. But that's just a brief touch of what's happening in the cigar industry. We need to tell the individual stories. We need to tell the overarching good that comes out of the cigar industry and to put the human face in the industry. And that's what was most important. So that took a shift maybe 2 years into the process. So the last year of actual filming and editing is when we decided, we need to tell the overarching story of the cigar industry and kind of stay away from the political aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's important, and you were able to still talk about the FDA issue without talking about the FDA issue, if that makes sense. I mean, the whole point was to bring awareness and to tell these stories.
Everybody's going through regulation of some sort. Well, every country is going through some sort of regulations. So regulations are important to talk about because premium cigar tobacco is not the same as cigarette tobacco or chewing tobacco or fill in the blanks or weed or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So we need to touch on it a little bit, but at the end of the day, that's not the overarching story. There's people involved and there's generations involved in what we love, which is premium cigar tobacco.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, the part that I loved about diving into the families is now like I, again, from the cigar nerd perspective, so now like I can gear up and like hoping like the next thing you're going to do is X or the next thing you're going to do is Y. And I love that you guys started with JC Newman. I love that story about them. I mean, I've known it since the first time. Like I really dove into the history of JC Newman when this bad boy came out, when the Brick House came out back in the day. Like that's how I fell in love with the JC Newman family, was like when they're like that, the resurgence of a brand that they had owned for a century at that point. They brought it back as a $5 cigar, big whoop for, even for the time, it wasn't a big deal, but I thought the story was great. And I just kind of went into it and kind of just dove all the way into their entire family history and fell in love with it. So it was really cool that you guys were able to put it on video. But you're able to talk about this tonight too. Like you guys have the next chapter coming out, I guess, not next month, almost next month, because we're almost into February. It's going to be in March, right?
Coming up soon, yeah. We can officially announce that we're doing our next episode on Tatuaje, and not only Tatuaje, but we're touching on the boom and companies that came out of the boom. So yeah, we're very excited to hit that next chapter.
That's fantastic. So, like, are you going to start filming starting in March, or that's like it's going to be released in March?
No, we're premiering it at PCA in March 22nd of this year. We're going to premiere it. So shortly after that, it'll be available to the public. But we are officially premiering. We started filming it last year. We're going to officially premiere it in March.
That's awesome.
So we've committed that everything we do from now on, documentary wise, is going to be going through the PCA, and they've been so helpful with us with getting us into, back when it was IPCPR, getting us onto the trade floor and introducing us to everybody in the industry. So we've committed that everything that we do from now on is going to go through them. Which another thing that we're doing is telling the retailer story, which is super important because retailers need their stories told as well. And we've started officially filming comedy shows that we're shooting at retailer locations, with the first one being at Corona Cigar Company in Tampa. We're going to show a little trailer of that as well in March.
That's
right
cool.
before we show the Top Line episode. Yeah, we're very excited.
That's awesome. What a complete change in dynamic. You telling a multi-generational, over century old story with JC Newman to talking about one of the um it's kind of hard to talk about him now in such a fashion, but when he burst onto the scene, Pete Johnson was a rebel, man. He was like
Of
he was
course.
the new generation, like a way of doing things differently, but still saluting the old way of doing things. And um um I love his story too. So I'm really excited to see y'all's take on that. That'll be so interesting. And Pete, who never likes to
Yeah.
talk about himself, talking about himself will be really fun to see. Um,
Yeah. I will say he's been the biggest pain in the ass with this episode because he hates talking about himself
all
and
right.
he hates being on camera. Even in the original hand rolled, we okay. The only interview we lost because of a hard drive failure was Pete Johnson's episode or Pete Johnson's interview. We
Okay.
lost his hard drive. It completely died.
Oh my
We had to
gosh.
beg him for months to give us a new interview, and he did not want to be in the movie whatsoever. So been the biggest pain in the ass with his own episode of being on film because he doesn't want to be on camera. He doesn't want anybody to celebrate him. But to celebrate Pete Johnson or to celebrate Tatuai is to celebrate my father. It's to
The Garcia.
celebrate
Yeah.
the people that came out of the boom. It's to also pay homage to the boom and the people that came out of the boom. So it's an important story to tell, but he hates being on camera. So it's been
Yeah.
a fun journey so far.
It's kind of been a running joke with him and I. Like whenever he's been such a great supporter of my podcast, and he'll come on basically anytime I want him to. He was my 100th take. I really wanted him. He was the person that I wanted to
Yeah,
celebrate my 100th episode with, and since then he's come on like several more times, um and each time like I learned something new, and I have a slew of friends in the industry that I really enjoy talking to because they give me that perspective, which is always something new when I'm talking to them, which is great. Pete's
of
one of those
course.
people, and but the running joke between me and Pete is like, okay, well, I know you're not going to like this, but I'm going to say something nice about you. So you're going to say that it's great. You're going to turn it back on praise for your father-in-law, which is it's fine, and that's okay. It's cool.
Yeah,
And but he has done a lot, and that's so. I think I know you and Steve will have put together a really great way of telling that story while honoring it the way that Pete would want to. Like I think that that's
of course.
that we're gonna see that pretty realistically, which is really great. Um,
Yeah.
but what so I mean I don't want to give away anything here, but like I mean what other background pieces like did you do a lot of interviews with the Garcia family and other parts of it or
We haven't shot any interviews with them yet for this episode. We're working on that still. Uh, I'll be honest with you. We haven't even started editing it yet, but we'll have it done by March. By March, by the premiere. We're working on a lot of stuff. We've done a lot of interviews, kind of leading up to this point, just not with the Garcia family yet for this specific episode.
that'll be
So
exciting.
it'll all come together. But um, our goal is to tell the best story possible without giving Pete too many flowers. Because I mean, he deserves his praise in some cases, but the overarching story is that we need to tell the industry story, and we tell the story coming out of the boom. And this is one of the stories that came out of the boom,
Mhm.
and that's what we're working on right now.
Yeah, again he hates when I say this, but I mean in large part like their project that came out of the PCA trade show last year, the La Union, is such a fitting celebration of the 20 years that they've been doing business together because in a lot of ways, and I've heard this comparison in a lot of ways, my father wouldn't be my father without Pete Johnson and Tatuaje.
Sure,
And Tatuaje and
sure,
Pete Johnson wouldn't be Tatuaje and Pete Johnson without the Garcia family. So I mean
of
it
course,
really is a real true collaboration. Um I mean, you just don't see that. I mean, there's been some long-standing partnerships this industry, but nothing um like that I can think of.
of course,
At least off the top
of
of my head.
course.
I mean, JC Newman and the Fuente family is probably another shining example of that. But um, I think theirs goes back 20 years too, further than 20 years. So that there's some great linear
Well, the
That's there.
Newmans and the Fuentes have been partners since the late '80s, so they kind
Yeah.
of
So
trump
they beat that.
everybody
Okay.
right now. Yeah, yeah,
That's crazy. That's crazy. Um,
yeah. But Drew has some funny stories about Drew when he was a teenager, and the internet just came out, which you and I are old enough to remember that those days.
yeah.
Drew has some funny stories about starting the first cigar, not blog, but like online chat group, and seeing Pete Johnson for the first time coming up in these chat groups back before he even had a brand.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny too. That predates a lot of people.
It it's it's such a small world. Um, and that's what I try to explain to people. Like the trade show that we go to every year has like
Yeah,
hundreds and thousands of people in attendance. And I'm just a few years into this now. This I'm going in, in November of later this year will be my seventh year celebrating the show. And, that's still, relatively speaking, that's still such a short amount of time. But I'm very pleased to say this, and I'm not bragging, but I'm very pleased to say that I can walk into that trade show floor and I have relationships with people in almost every booth. And
yeah,
that's a testament to the industry. That's not me.
of
That's just
course.
how the cigar world works, and everybody kind of knows each other, and it's such a testament to the amazing people that are in it, which is cool.
The cigar industry has been a family in many facets, and they're so accepting to people that are authentic.
Hmm.
They're very quick to see the bullshit, but the people that are authentic, that just want to help you tell the story or just want to just communicate what you guys are doing in the industry, they're so just helping and willing to just be part of it. And it's been incredible. I mean, for us here in California, I'm never going to own a brand. I'm never going to own a shop. I just want to tell stories of people from the industry. And it's been amazing to be able to partner up with people in the industry and just have them accept us and allow us to tell their story. And it's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's considering like how again how generational this is. Like you hear about like secret family recipes being guarded and things like that, and like other their
Sure.
areas and things like that. You would think that this industry would be a lot like that, very similar to like the I'm sure like the spirits world is where people are guarding recipes with their like with safes and like you know armored guards and things like that, and they could certainly this industry could certainly do that. And there's some bad blood here and there between certain people and everything, but that's so few and far between. But if you're just a person like you or I with a genuine interest in what they're doing, like everybody kind of has an open door, which is just incredible when you think about it.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, Hiroshi Robina in the documentary, the Handle documentary, said "Los secretos no se dicen," like this secrets we don't talk about, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, they're very open. Otherwise, the entire industry has been very open, very accepting.
That was such a unique opportunity, I'm sure, like to have that conversation. And the place in which you had it too, which is
Oh yeah,
how did that come
which is
about?
not there anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you go through Canada? Did you go through Mexico? Like how did y'all end up? Because this was before anything was lifted, right?
We went, yeah. This was 2018. We went through Mexico, through Cancun. So we traveled with about 13 bags worth of gear. We went to Dominican Republic first, then Miami, then DC. Then we flew to Cancun, where we rented a hotel room because it was cheaper than renting like lockers to hold all of our gear. We rented a hotel room and kept all of our gear in the hotel room, put the do not disturb sign in the hotel room, and we went into Cancun with into Cuba with visitor visas with just a small camera in each of our backpacks and one light. We had one light versus three lights that we travel with, a little battery powered light. So that's how we got into Cuba. And we had one gentleman who happened to know everybody in Cuba. He hosts trips to Cuba and does all these tours. He happened to know Hirochi. He happened to know his father Carlos, and he got us those interviews. I mean, it was crazy. We were actually supposed to do an interview with Fidel Castro's son, which canceled while we were in Cuba. We were going to do an interview with him talking about regulation and cigars and everything in Cuba, but that canceled while we were in Cuba. But
wow.
this gentleman, whose name is escaping my mind currently, he got us all these interviews. Just some random guy that hosts tours in Cuba. He helped us out.
Insane.
It's the theme of everything that we do for Handrolled is what are the odds? Every time we get into the presence of greatness of the cigar industry with Jose Orlando or whoever else,
Right.
like in the industry, it's what the fuck are we doing here? What are the odds? So that's been the theme the entire time, and that continues to be the theme. I mean, it's crazy. We have no business being where we are.
Well, that was such a great we're going to go back to what you just mentioned about the Padron family.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Yeah.
Jose Orlando Padron passed away. What I mean, I'm talking like maybe
Same year.
yeah. Well, I think it was almost like a couple of weeks or like a couple of months after you guys.
Months, yeah.
Yeah, it was just insane, and that was. I mean, just what an amazing. Sorry, you guys barely missed it with Carlito's father. He had passed away a little bit earlier than that. And to
put in perspective, we released our first trailer, which was just a theoretical, like, this is what we're trying to do with the video, or sorry, with the documentary. Carlito shared the trailer, I think 2 days after his father passed. And that's what made our trailer viral. We had 30,000 views the next morning because Carlito shared it.
Oh, damn.
2 days after his father passed. We had no business getting traction on the original documentary until Carlito shared it. So, and then the same thing, we shot an interview with Jorge Padron, with George Padron. That night, his father could not get a hold of him and thought that these 3 white terrorists, myself, Steve, and Serge, our musical director, we were the 3 white terrorists that were in the factory. We kidnapped his son and did God knows what with his son that day. And then his son had to explain to him, like, no, Dad, these guys are doing a movie. This is what they're happy with, what they're trying to do with the documentary. And he said, okay, I'll give them an interview. And that was the last on-camera interview he ever did. And he passed away in December. We shot that interview in June. He passed away in December 5th.
Oh, wow.
Shortly after that. Yeah. So, again, what are the odds? We had no business doing anything that we've done with the documentary, yet the doors have been opened because the cigar industry has been so accepting, and they recognize when people are trying to be authentic and try to tell their story, they recognize that authenticity and they accepted us, which has been, I mean, I can't even explain the gratitude I have for the cigar industry for that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stories that he shared originally too. I think if I remember, I had a brief conversation with George at a trade show a couple of years ago, and I talked to him about that interview specifically, and he was telling me that there were some bits and pieces that were part of the film and some that ended up on the cutting room floor that like he had never heard before, and that's insane.
We recently sent George the full interview. It was like an hour and a half long interview. We sent it to him, I want to say in September of last year, so really recently. The original documentary ended on Jose Orlando passing. That was the original ending of the documentary. I don't know if you saw it at when we premiered it at PCA.
I didn't see. Yeah,
IPCBR.
I wasn't there.
Okay.
I arrived a couple hours after you guys premiered it, so I hadn't seen it. The first time I saw it was when I bought it off of Prime. That was the first.
Okay, so the people that were at the trade show saw the original ending, which was paying homage to Jose Orlando. And then we got to show that to the entire Padron family. They rented out a conference room at one of the hotels that they were staying at that same year. We got to show them the original ending, and then we ended up changing it just because it didn't fit the way the movie was supposed to go, the flow. But the entire interview we sent to Jose or to George in September, and we're hoping to do a episode on the Padron family as well. We think it'd be really good, and we have the entire interview to still show, which we've only shown about 15 minutes of it, but there's still about an hour and a half left of the entire interview.
How long was the JC Newman episode? What's the final timestamp on it?
50, 53 minutes.
53 minutes. And then
Yeah.
how do you project about the same length for the Tatuaje episode?
Every episode we do moving forward will be between that 45-minute to 60-minute mark.
Okay.
We're not sure yet on Tatuaje. We'll see once we get into editing if it's a one episode or if it's a two-part episode. We don't know yet until we get into it.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. We'll do whatever length it takes to tell the story appropriately. We'll do that.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, definitely wanted to cover a couple of other things before we get into some of our fun questions to conclude our night. So, but we'll take a quick break here with one of our fun questions. So, Jesse, we've added a couple segments since the last time you've been on, so this will be fun. This will be a fun exercise. But this is our first stuff, what I call our fun segment. This is our United presidential trivia segment. So don't worry, it's multiple choice. But it's always brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. As we mentioned before, Jesse, the J.C. Newman family story started in Ohio. There's actually been a number of presidents from Ohio. It's actually the second most presidential state. Most presidents have come from three states: Virginia, Massachusetts, and Ohio being it as well, which is interesting because it's a battleground state. But not to digress. But anyway, so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about one of those presidents tonight. And one of those presidents from Ohio, of course, was William Howard Taft. We all know the story about him getting stuck in a bathtub. He was really large. He was also the first president to ever be appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court after his presidency. Some cool, fun facts about the dude. But this guy was also an accomplished athlete, believe it or not, besides being a very large man. And he was actually a champion at a specific sport when he was in college at Yale. So that's your question tonight. What sport was William Howard Taft a champion in while he was in Yale? Was it A, rowing, B, tennis, C, wrestling, or D, gymnastics?
I feel like Steve would know this answer since he's also a very large man and could potentially get stuck in a tub.
Damn, man. That's fucking
I'm
savage.
going.
Shit. Oh, fuck. I did not think I was going to go there. I thought you were going to be like,
Well,
really
you
smart
set me up for it. That was
he's pretty smart.
that was a juicy pitch, and I picked. Yeah. I'm going to guess rowing because I know I'm going to be wrong. It's definitely not tennis, let's be honest.
I thought gymnastics would have thrown everybody off. No, it wasn't gymnastics. It wasn't tennis. It's actually not rowing either. It was actually wrestling. It was actually wrestling. He was a world champ. He was a collegiate champion wrestling. But I mean, he was a very large collegiate athlete. Apparently, he was in the neighborhood of like 275 pounds, which was big back.
275 was large.
I mean, 275. He was actually over 300, and they speculate he was over about 350 pounds when he was in the White House. Being our largest president, which is just that's a large man. 275 is a large man. Like that's crazy, and especially at the time.
I'm 230, so it's not out of this world. How short was he? Because that makes all the difference.
He was a bigger guy too. Like he was a little over 6 feet tall. So like it was like he was So I mean, it wasn't like compacted into a very small frame or anything like that. But the dude's pretty big. Like and. It was yeah. I mean, again, people were smaller back then. So like the fact that he got stuck in the tub it's not as insulting as it sounds, even though it pretty is insulting. I mean, again, he was a big guy, but for a collegiate athlete in the late 1800s to be 275, like that's a pretty big dude. So I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to wrestle him for sure. So but Just to kind of go back to what we're talking about too, like again, born and raised in California, what made you choose Wright State? Like why'd you want to go back to Ohio, or what'd you want to go to Ohio for? Just because of the family connection, or
Yeah, I had family in Cedarville, which was about 20 minutes away from Dayton, where Wright State is, and it's just a change of pace from California. I mean, I was 18. I didn't know any different. I just wanted something different from what I was used to. I wanted to get away from family. I wanted to get away from everything I knew out here. So I went to college in Ohio for a year. But yeah, it was just experience 4 seasons because where I'm at in California, we don't get snow. We barely have spring. We barely have fall. We have summer and like I don't know 2 months of winter, and even that's. I mean, today was a high of 59, so I don't even know if we can call it winter.
yeah, we had a cold,
Yeah,
we had a massive freeze last week here in Texas, man. It happens once a year where it's just the weather gets fucking weird. We were in single digits for highs, like it was just insane. And then this
yeah,
summer
we
it'll
don't get
be
that.
it'll be triple digits and just obnoxious. So
Yeah, we don't get snow. We have rain right now, which is unheard of right now for us, and that's about as crazy as it gets. It's a little bit cold and a little bit of rain. That's about it.
that's crazy. But I mean, the 59, that's cold for you though, because it doesn't get that cold,
We'll
right?
get a little bit. We no, we'll get high 30s in the winter. January is the coldest. But where we're at, we're an hour and a half away from Lake Tahoe, so we have snow an hour and a half away from us if we
Right.
want to go skiing or whatever. And then we also have the desert an hour and a half the opposite direction. So it's just we're in a sweet spot. But yeah, where we're at right now, we'll get 40s to 50s until about February, and then it goes back up to 60s, and then everybody's fine. Everybody's happy.
Okay. So whereabouts are you in California now again?
Sacramento.
Okay. Okay. Is that where you
Yeah.
grew up?
Yes, I grew up in Sacramento. I was born in the Bay Area. Steve was also born in the Bay Area, near San Francisco. So we grew up in that technical area. But then I came to Sacramento when I was 6 years old. Steve came out here when he was about 13. So yeah, we're very used to this area.
What's what's different about Sacramento from what like people would characterize as like other parts of California, like LA, San Diego, like the ones that everyone talks. Sacramento's like the big city that nobody talks about from California, I feel like.
Yeah, Sacramento's the capital city.
Right.
The
And
Bay Area,
and
or
everyone
sorry,
talks about LA, San Francisco, San Diego, and then like Sacramento never gets any love. It's the
yeah,
freaking capital.
LA and San Diego. Well, San Diego is perfect year round. It's like 75 degrees year round. It's never anything. It's perfect. It's coastal. It's everything is perfect there. And so it's hard to describe California when people have only been to San Diego. LA is very similar, but you have the traffic and you have the Hollywood and all that stuff. So you have that stigma. But Sacramento is kind of up north. We're about 6 hours away from LA, about 8 hours away from San Diego. Um, and then we're close to everything. So like I said, an hour and a half away from literally every climate you could think of. We're an hour and a half away from it.
That's cool.
Aside from humidity, we don't have bad humidity in summer.
There you go. That's what makes it nice.
Yeah,
I hate the humidity.
it's dry.
I grew up in El Paso, Texas, which is the desert. So yeah, I didn't really know what humidity was until I went to college. And I still hate it
Yeah,
20 years later. Like still hate it to
I
this day.
can't. People ask me all the time if I would move to a different state, what state would it be? And I cannot, aside from the taxes and all the craziness of California, I cannot picture being in a different state. We've traveled quite a bit for our jobs. I cannot picture being in a different state just for the weather and the where we're located geographically. I can't picture going anywhere else. But also, I have kids and my ex-wife, so I can't really go anywhere. But for
Yeah,
now, I'm gonna stick around over here.
good deal. Good deal. Well, I mean, we got a little off topic. That was our presidential trivia segment, which is always brought to you by United Cigars. That's my fault, Jesse. So don't.
No, you're good.
Featuring La Giada Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero Garofalo, the Firecracker, and the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. So kind of to go back to what we were talking about, obviously with these new episodes that you guys are going to be doing, is again, I'm not trying to like dive into something you're maybe not prepared to talk about, but I mean, have you guys, is there a set number of episodes that you want to get to? Or is it just about like, hey, we're going to keep telling the stories as long as the stories come to us? Or like, what's the long-term vision a little bit?
You hit the nail on the head. It's as long as the cigar industry will accept us and will allow us to tell the stories, we'll continue to tell the stories. And we have no end in sight. That we love being storytellers. We love being able to tell these elaborate stories, and we will continue to do so because they are so important and so vital to the cigar industry. And not only putting human faces to the industry, but telling the rich history of all these families that have been involved for so many generations.
Nice. One thing I really liked, and I don't know if it's something you guys are going to continue to do or if it's just a unique opportunity at the time, but I love seeing Patrick from Half Wheel as part of the documentary for the Newman family. Um, Mostly because it felt like one of my people, one of my own, kind of got in and stuff.
Of
And
course.
I thought that was really cool. How did that come about, and like, what was the decision behind that, or was it a conscious decision, or is it just like circumstances and coincidence?
It was going back to what are the odds? You know,
Yeah.
it's like we were at the JC Newman 125th anniversary party, which happened on their on their 127th anniversary because of COVID. COVID happened during their 125th, so they had their party 2 years later, and we grabbed whoever we could grab to interview at the time. Patrick was one of those guys, which we love to interview whoever we can get a hold of. But we felt Patrick was instrumental in telling the story because he has been around for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
He has been able to review people's cigars, and he has been involved in people's stories, and he was instrumental in helping us out. We're talking about the Americans specifically. He had a great story or a great anecdote when we interviewed him. We asked him, was Drew crazy or was he smart with starting the American cigar? And he said yes, which means, yeah, he's fucking insane for what he's doing, but he also has a vision beyond anybody else in the company. And Eric, his dad, is just all of Eric's interview is Drew is insane and he keeps making us do all this crazy shit, but also it keeps working. Mm-hmm. So all these things play together perfectly for their episode. So anything we do at the beginning seems like dumb luck, but at the end just works perfectly.
Yeah, I thought it was I think you saw like what I found really great about the JC Newman episode too was you found these interesting little tidbits about the family that, like, again, I've done a deep dive into the family history, and that story is rich and it's great. You know, you go back to the days in the barn in Ohio, and how they got to Tampa, and how Ybor City was just a pivotal point in history.
Real quick, it's not just that. If you look at the episode, one of the historians we interviewed, which again is dumb luck, talks about how they're Jews from Hungary,
Yeah,
which they should have been part of the Holocaust. There's no reason why they should have been in America, but they happened to come to America 30 years before the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. So had that not been the case, JC Newman Cigar Company would not exist.
Right.
So yes, you're right. But at the same time, it's what are the fucking odds that they're now 4 generations in America being Austro-Hungarian Jews? It's insanity.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's actually a great point. I've actually had this conversation a number of times on several podcasts and stuff. There's so many little coincidences and so many little pivotal moments in history that matter, that make up our modern day fabric. And that's one of them that you just pointed out. It's like, okay, if the family didn't get this opportunity to work with tobacco in Tampa, and Tampa wasn't right for the opportunity, then, you know, they never make that move. people never come over from Europe, and then their entire family is wiped out, more
Yeah,
than likely. It's
absolutely.
and it there's little coincidences like that that just continue to happen all the time. To go back to like the Jose Orlando Padron story, he was down in Cuba to negotiate the release of political prisoners. He gives one of his cigars to Fidel in a gesture, and someone's there to photographs it, and it's taken way out of context. And his
Of course.
family and his family suffered because of it at the time. So it's interesting points in history like that are that in that case it was a literal snapshot, but snapshots of history that really kind of tilt the very fabric of history in itself. And it's really cool that you get to be a part of that with creating documentaries and stuff.
To that point, his factory in Miami gets bombed.
Long,
This
yeah.
factory in Nicaragua gets burned down. And he's the first guy in the 70s to have a remote start on his car because he's afraid that there's going to be a bomb in his car. Fast forward to 5 years ago when we're out there in 2018, there's these three white guys in the factory and he can't get a hold of his son.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all these things playing into there's three white terrorists at the factory
Right.
hanging out with my son. They just kidnapped my son. So yeah,
Well,
you're right. You're
and
100% right.
that's it. Well, that's an incredible story, right? And you're like most people hear that, like probably heard the first part of tonight's show, heard you tell that story, and probably think like, was the guy crazy? Was the guy out of his mind? No, like he really wasn't. He
No,
lived. He
no,
lived. He lived a hellish past, and like I
fully
mean,
justified.
you know, that the story about when he was working in a mine and his boss had like they had to choose people. He had to choose
Yeah,
that. I mean, talk about. I mean, we're going full circle with the connection to the Holocaust and the Newman family here. Like choosing, he's like, "Oh, pick me because I'm not
yeah,
letting someone else do it." Like that's oh God, man. Just and this is like 50 years ago. This
yeah.
isn't like ancient history. Like this is pretty recent shit. Like holy cow, man.
And and that man lived to 91.
Hmm.
And it's because of him and a few other key players that we had tobacco out of Nicaragua and Honduras. And we have Padrones that we get to smoke and celebrate present day. It's crazy how much rich history there is in the cigar industry. That's why we keep saying we love telling the stories because the stories are never ending. They're always there to tell.
Right.
And we're not done telling them.
We're ping ponging a little bit here, just but that brought me back to the part of the JC Newman's episode where you guys were able to film the time capsule burial.
Yeah.
Was that again? What are the odds? Like, was that or was that part of the planned recording?
Is that part was accidental.
Okay.
That part was accidental. We happened to be that was December of 2020. We were out there to shoot interviews. We shot the initial interviews that you see in the film of Eric, Bobby, and Drew. Those are the interviews you see. We also shot the time capsule burial that happened to be at the 125th anniversary. So we had to wait. We strategically waited till they actually did the party, the 125th anniversary party, which again happened on the 127th year. But everything else was accidental leading up to that.
It's crazy. That was such a cool idea. And it was really great. I've had the privilege of speaking with Eric Newman quite a bit, and I've met Bobby once, and that was a perspective that I always wanted to hear was his perspective a little bit. And I've obviously had conversations with Drew, so I always wanted to hear a little bit more from Bobby, and so that was really great that you were able to get that those three on there and everything.
Yeah.
Um, was there any part of the
Eric,
story that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Eric and Bobby were the ultimate salesmen for JC Newman. They're pivotal in the family split that we talk about in the movie. They're pivotal in the fact that they bought out the rest of the family and went the route that they did and took the loss that they did back in the 70s and 80s. So Eric and Bobby were a big help to the fact that JC Newman Cigar Company still exists today. They're the biggest salesman of everybody in the family.
It's crazy. Was there any part, and I'm sure there were a lot of this, and I'm sure as a documentarian, you always catch these surprises all the time because you're constantly hearing stories. But was there any part that maybe we haven't talked about tonight that like caught you off guard, or was something that was really interesting or even funny? Perhaps it was like, oh, that's really like never saw that coming with their family.
The biggest one, which we show in the film, we had to because when we do these episodes, it's a lot of time spent on Zoom for us doing interviews before we even start rolling on the camera. So I think we had like 6 to 10 hours of interviews with the entire family beforehand. One of the stories we got during the interviews was Eric Newman's story about meeting Snoop Dogg, and that's we had to
I was
tell it
hoping you'd
in the
mention
movie
that.
itself.
Oh God, I was hoping
Yeah,
you'd mention that. That's funny. It's funny part.
it's so fucking hilarious, and we had to tell that story. So we asked Eric about it on camera, and he told it as well. That's the biggest fucking shock of everything. Like, despite the 4 generations since the late 1800s, all that stuff, it's Eric not only meeting Snoop Dogg in a sandwich shop, but then refereeing for 2 of his football games after that. It's amazing,
That's
incredible.
funny. God, yeah, it was such a funny story. So where the episode is the episode available on any distribution channels at this point, or
Yes. We've committed to YouTube for our films from now on. The documentary had a great run for 4 years on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon, but we were limited to 22 countries. On YouTube, you are not limited by price for rental or for purchase, and you're not limited by country or by translation, rather. So everything's going to be on YouTube from now on. Everything we release is going to be on YouTube, and that's on YouTube currently.
okay. So
So
if
that's available everywhere.
okay, great. So we can go to YouTube. We go to the hand roll channel or what?
Exactly. Just
Okay,
type in hand rolled, you'll find it immediately.
cool. And is it free or is it to rent or to
Free,
purchase? It's absolutely free.
free.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Again, we want to put a human face in the industry. We want to raise awareness for the industry because we all, as cigar smokers, know that the premium cigar industry is different from any other tobacco industry. So we want to just get people to understand the industry that we know and love, and to love it the same way we do. And that's 100% free to everybody.
That's
From now
awesome.
on, everything we do is on YouTube.
That's fantastic. Um, I was so proud to purchase it from Amazon. And I remember having this conversation. I'll be candid with you, I was a little miffed. Because when you did release the original documentary on YouTube and it was free, and they're like, oh man, well, why did I pay for it? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like someone said that to me, and I was like, I got pretty heated actually about it. I was like the reason it's free now is because we bought it in the first place. Like
Exactly.
like
We
are
put
you
a
are
lot
you
of fucking
crazy?
work into it, man.
Yeah,
Like
damn right. Like I
it
thought it
cost
was
us
a
two
steal.
marriages
I thought it was a steal. Like what was the original price? 14.99. I don't even know if it was that much.
to purchase it, and to buy it was $5. But at the same time, some for some people that's a burden. You know what I mean? And it was only
Sure.
translated in Spanish and in English, and that's only available in so many countries. So
Okay.
we removed the translation burden. We removed the money aspect of it, and we made it available to everybody. And to us, that's more important. But yes,
That's
it's a
awesome.
lot of work on our end, and but for us, it's we get to create these documentaries, these long featured films, which are not a 15 or 30-second commercial, which is fun and it pays the bills. But we get to tell these long stories, and it's super fun for us to exercise these new muscles that we now have, and to be able to share with everybody not only our life's work, but just the beautiful stories of the cigar industry, and that's most important.
Yeah, yeah, Sorry. Yeah, that's my little soapbox. Like that was just like I couldn't believe I was having that conversation. I was like, "Are you? Wow!" Like should have just waited. Like that's like saying I'm not gonna go see like this movie in the theater because like I'll just wait till it's on Netflix, which I also fucking hate. Like I hate that attitude too.
But
There's
the
like
movie was the cost of a cigar, so it
yeah,
wasn't like
exactly.
crazy
That's what I'm
expensive.
saying. Like
you
that's what
know,
I'm saying. Like it's not like I would have paid shoot, I know it's hindsight, it's gonna hurt you. I would have paid $50 for it. I would have. I mean, that's
yeah,
totally
that hurts a
like
lot.
but, but
I'm not
I
gonna
would have
sleep tonight, but that's fine.
I
Whatever.
would have paid more is my point. Like I would have like 1,000%.
Thank
And
you.
I've certainly gotten my money's worth out of the amount that I paid for it, you know. So I've watched it
Thank
so
you.
many
I
times.
appreciate it.
It's unbelievable, unbelievable. The again to get back into the artistry of it too, like when you guys started piecing together and editing and stuff, like again, you have no formal schooling, right? So it's not like you guys went to documentary school. You didn't, you know, I mean, I'm a big Ken Burns fan. I think Ken Burns is a great American storyteller. Um, not just because he did my favorite sport, baseball, but the Civil War documentary he did is good and stuff like that. But like, where did you guys like pick up a style, or what was like? Was it just that you were captivated by stories and then you started just piecing together bits and pieces? Like, where did y'all pick up the style and the artistry that you guys are able to display? So
We were absolutely captivated by the stories, to your point, but we also it was a lot of time spent in the office between Steve and myself, and just ballparking what the story needs to be. And there's a lot of time writing stuff on whiteboards. We used to have something like 15 whiteboards through our entire office, and we would just write down every like bullet point of what we need to do with the story and what was going to be the most compelling story to tell. So it was a lot of that. It was what was going to be the most important story to tell, and attack that versus what we thought was most important to tell. And so it was a lot of getting rid of our own egos from day one. The original hand rolled documentary was 4.5 hours long, which I don't even know that we have a copy of that anymore. But that was us sitting down with Pete Johnson, Dan Welsh. We sat down and we watched it twice in one day, 4.5 hours long. It was and then whittling down the story from that, and it was showing it to other people in the industry and saying, "Yo, what do you think is the most important part of everything that we have compiled here, and how do we tell that?" We shot 69 interviews for Handrolled. We showed 31 interviews, I believe, is the end
yeah,
number. So it was, despite our own stories. I wanted to tell. I fought hard for Indiana Ortez, for example, to be in the film, and for her family to be in the original documentary. But our editor and the people that were around us decided that wasn't the most important part. So, just to give you an example, it was, there's so many stories to tell. How do we whittle it down to an hour and a half and make it as compelling as possible? And that was the process that we went through, and that's the
yeah.
process that we continue to go through.
That's got to be that's always something that I've, you know, like because a lot of again, I'm long-winded, so it makes for a longer podcast, always.
Sure.
But I've always been fascinated by that. A lot of people make fun of like some of these director's cuts and stuff, and they're like, oh, like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings director's cut, for example. You know, but like, how do you? But even that exhaustedly long version of his film that he created, like there's still stuff that ends up on the floor, and that's got to be brutal. It's like you're cutting away, you know.
It
I mean,
hurts.
just
It
yeah,
hurts. And you have to ultimately succumb to people that are not cigar smokers, because our main editor for Handrolled was not a cigar smoker at all. He vaped every once in a while, but that's about it. You have to succumb to these people that are gonna give you insight and give you advice based on what they think is going to be the best film, and then just go with that advice and hope for the best. And it works out, but there's a lot of hurt feelings along the way, including ourselves. So Steve and I had a lot of hurt feelings because there's people we wanted to include that we couldn't include.
yeah,
And some of the most hurtful YouTube comments we get is, why wasn't so and so involved? Why wasn't this guy involved? Like, I can't believe you didn't interview this guy. No, actually, we did interview these
Did
people, but it just didn't make the cut. So it's whatever is going to tell the most compelling story for an hour and a half. You're whittling down more than 100 years of this
right.
incredible industry to an hour and a half film. How the fuck do you tell that story in 90 minutes? So that's what we had to do, and unfortunately, it's going to hurt some feelings along the way, our own included,
Well,
and our egos included.
well, yeah, and I mean, I didn't know I hurt your feelings at the time, but I mean, I brought it up during
Not
our
you,
first
not you.
conversation. No, well, I brought it up in our first conversation because I talked about how Honduras wasn't talked about, and like you said, it's 90 minutes. Like, how do you get everything?
Well, while we were filming, we couldn't go into Honduras because they had an election year. During that time, when we really wanted to go to Honduras, they had an election year. We were talking to Christian Aurora, and he's just telling us, "Yo, it's not safe to go to Honduras right now." Just kept telling us it's not safe to go. So we could not tell that story because it wasn't in the cards. It was not safe. It just could not be done. And then there's also Ecuador, and there's Connecticut River Valley, which thankfully we had Nick Perdomo. Nick Melillo. We were able to tell the Connecticut River Valley story because of that. But there's so many stories we couldn't tell, and that's just how it is. You know what? The advice we got from a different documentarian, a guy who's had 20 documentaries out, he's had Emmy Awards for documentaries, told us, this is your first documentary, just make it for 20 grand and just put it out really quickly. We could not do that to the cigar industry. We could not just tell a simple story and get it out for nothing. We had to really dive into it, and this is the story we came up with. But we could not tell the full story because we weren't available. As we're moving forward, we're not able to fully divulge what we're working on, but we will tell the story of Honduras very, very soon. We will tell the rest of the story. We're just working on it slowly as we go.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, and we talked a lot about this in our first conversation about the original documentary, but for what it's worth, I think that it captured a lot of beautiful stories. My favorite was probably the series of dads. Like we said, we talked about just months before he passes away, Jose Orlando Padron, the last on-camera interview that he did, both Carlito Fuente and Nick Perdomo, talking about their fathers was really particularly touching to me, because again, what their fathers meant to the cigar industry and obviously meant to them and still mean to them to this day, which is really just a beautiful moments captured on film. And that in itself is a part of history that you're like, it was great to capture Jose Orlando Padron as that in that lapse of time. But I think just hearing from sons talk about their fathers and the importance of that was probably pretty incredible as well.
You cannot tell the current cigar industry story without talking about the past. So their past stories, their dads, their grandfathers, those stories need to be told as well, and they need to be highlighted. So yeah, we absolutely try to do our best to pay homage to the old heads in the industry, and also talk about what's currently happening and what the future is.
Absolutely. Terrific. Well, just have a few more questions to kind of close out our evening. That is all fun and everything. But so the piece on the retailer aspect, that's going to be released next year, correct?
2025, yes.
Okay. And what in I guess in a sentence or two, like what's the other than the fact that it's focusing on retail, like is it the day in and day out, what it takes to running a retail operation? Like what's the overarching story of this piece of the whole thing?
We're working on that currently. So we don't know exactly what that's going to be. The important aspect is that we want to tell the retailer story and highlight retailers, because without retailers, we don't have an industry as we know it today. But how do you tell their story in an interesting way? That's what we're working on right now. We started with Corona Cigar Company with Jeff Borshwitz. And
Nice.
what we did was we shot a comedy show there with Robert Kelly, who's a huge comedian, hilarious, loves cigars, probably one of the biggest comedians that are the biggest advocates for the cigar industry. He's been on Rogan, he's been on everything. So we're doing that right now, and what we hope to come up with is a beautiful story showing the struggle, the come up, and the success of the retailers currently.
That's awesome. Really looking forward to that perspective. I mean, I'm looking forward to all these perspectives. I'm on pins and needles as we go through the next few years, and you guys are putting together these chapters and stuff. And I think it'll be like literally a kid in the candy stores. Each one gets released. Just because have such such respect for you guys and what the work that you guys do is just wonderful. So, well, terrific. Let's get into some of these fun segments to close out our evening. And so this next section, Jesse, is a little bit more personal. It's called This or That. So it's just a little like rapid fire segment. So it's very simple. I just give you two things and you pick one. So easy enough. Some Perfect. Are cigar related, some are documentary related, some are just random. So let's kind of dive in here. So I think you kind of answered this earlier, but I had this one down. So asking questions or operating the camera?
I'm more of a camera guy. Steve's the asking the questions guy. So I do more of the heavy lifting with all the lighting equipment and all that fun stuff. Because setting up for an interview, it takes an hour to set up an interview, 40 minutes to an hour. We shoot for about an hour to an hour and a half, and it takes 30 minutes to break down. So I'm more of the heavy lifting on that side. Steve is the guy that asks all the questions that leads the interviews and all that stuff.
Awesome. Would you rather edit film or audio?
Film, always.
Yeah.
Audio's the bane of my existence.
Fucking hate editing audio. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
You're off by a millisecond of a millisecond, and it throws everything off. It's terrible. It's terrible. Hate it.
I'd rather that than have the gain too high or have to try to deal with audio. I fucking hate audio. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'd rather have dental surgery. It's close. It's a toss up. All right. The ability to travel without a passport or the ability to read minds?
Minds. The ability to read minds, I'd say.
Okay. If you had to pick someone real quick off the cuff, whose mind would you want to read?
Ooh. Trump. Because he's so fucking controversial.
That's a really popular pick. How about that cigar guys used to ask that question specifically. I hadn't planned it this way, but since you said it, I was like, okay, I'll dive into it. But that answer came up quite a bit when they were asking that question all the time.
Yeah.
Trump. Yeah.
I want to know why he was a Democrat. Now he runs as a Republican. I want to know a lot of things.
How the progression of Donald Trump. It'd be fascinating. I have to say that would be a journey for sure. All right, call or text?
Text.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Text guy. Chocolate. Milk chocolate specifically. I fucking hate dark chocolate. Dark chocolate can go fuck itself 100% of the time.
So here's a fun fact. I'm actually allergic to chocolate. I don't eat it. I can't eat it. Yeah, so it's vanilla by default for me, but but you have strong feelings against dark chocolate. This is interesting. Like, what? It's the bitterness you don't like, or what is it?
I don't like the bitterness. You know what? It's funny. I didn't drink coffee. Steve and I actually opened a coffee shop about 9 years ago. I didn't drink coffee until 3 months after we opened the coffee shop because coffee reminded me of dark chocolate. I still don't like dark chocolate, but I like coffee now. And dark chocolate can go fuck itself.
Do you put any cream or sugar in it, or do you drink it black?
If it's diner coffee, I put cream in it. If it's good coffee, proper coffee, I'll drink it black.
Oh, you'll drink it black. I drink coffee black, and but I won't drink bad coffee. I'm that big of a snob. Like if the coffee's bad, I fucking won't drink it. Like it's just nope, not gonna do it.
If I need the energy, I'll drink it, but I'll put cream in it to soften the blow. But yeah, burnt coffee is It was horrible.
Oh God, bad coffee's bad coffee. It's just awful.
Yeah.
Bad
I'm a big
coffee's
fan of
worse than a bad cigar. Bad coffee is worse, and I've had some pretty bad cigars. That I
yeah,
just will
the
not
same.
return to. Yeah, bad coffee is worse than a bad cigar, though. It
Yeah,
is fucking terrible. Um, okay, so from a watching perspective, not a making perspective. So from you, just pure
okay.
enjoyment level, would you rather watch a film or would you rather watch a documentary?
Documentary, 100%.
Okay.
I
Any
think documentaries are the new books. So
okay.
it's the information highway. Yeah. I'd rather watch a documentary. I'd rather watch a podcast than listen to a podcast. Yeah,
Yes.
100% of the time.
I definitely watch it too. Like watch it. I'm stepping off camera for 2 seconds. I just have to grab a water. But
You're fine.
the I 100% agree with you. I think documentaries are in a way of they're a way of making books, and I definitely watch a lot more podcasts than I listen to, for sure.
Sure.
I think there's a video kind of makes sense to me. I love that. That being said, I love film. My audience knows this. I'm a huge film guy, so I mean, I would still probably pick a film, but it's very close. Like it's a hard call between the two.
I love films too. Don't get me wrong, but documentaries for me are more interesting. Even for Steve, I know Steve would rather listen to a podcast than he would watch a podcast, and he'll listen to them at almost 2 times speed, which is insane to me. I like to watch it in real time, so we differ that way. But yeah, I'd rather podcasts and documentaries for me is top.
Okay. So this one's open ended. It's not necessarily specific to cigars or specific to travel or anything like that. It's just an open ended of these two things. Are you picking Nicaragua or the Dominican Republic?
Nicaragua, Nicaragua. I love the Nicaraguan tobacco, but we've made a lot of friends in Nicaragua over the years, not just in the cigar industry, outside of the cigar industry. So we have a lot of people that we visit with when we go to Nicaragua. So Nicaragua's for me is like my favorite country out of any country I've ever visited, and I'll continue to go to Nicaragua forever.
Nice.
My own country aside, because Steve and I are Romanian, mind you, and we have family in Romania. So I'd rather go to Nicaragua than Romania any day.
Oh wow. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Um, would you rather be in a hot tub when it's 32 degrees outside or in a pool when it's 100 degrees outside?
Hot tub.
Hot tub?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the heat. The heat with the cold juxtaposition is fantastic.
Yes. I 100% agree. And I think we're weird, Jesse, because I think most people would pick the opposite. Like, oh, nothing
I
feels
think we're
better than a
not
pool on it.
serial killers.
Yeah. No, we're not that, but we're
Serial
definitely
killers like
different. Serial killers like pools in 100-degree weather. Uh,
I'm also Eastern European, so like the cold plunge has been a thing for us for a long time. You know what I mean? Which is now like this new hot thing in America.
right.
But like the cold plunge with the juxtaposition has been fun. But it's yeah, I'd rather hot tub with cold weather outside.
So this one was originally playing with you and Steve on it. I thought I was going to get two different answers, perhaps, but I'm interested to hear yours anyway. Tattoos or piercings? Can only have one.
You know, obviously tattoos.
Tattoos.
You're asking
Okay.
the wrong guy.
Right.
Steve doesn't have piercings, and he only has one tattoo. I have many
Oh, right,
tattoos,
tattoos.
and I have a couple piercings.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
done, or are you going to get more? Are you
My
going to get more tattoos?
I'm not fully covered yet, so yeah, I'm still getting more tattoos.
Would you get any more piercings?
I don't like tattoos. No, no more piercings. I'm 37 now. I'm kind of done with the piercings. I did my nose, and that's kind of like enough lately. But there's a certain point where piercings become a bit childish, in my opinion. But tattoos, I'm still working on that. I'm still getting covered. No face tattoos, but everything else is fair game.
Everything else? Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
probably never have a tattoo. I have my ears pierced. But I know you rock the backwards hat too. I probably will always rock a backwards hat. I'm 40 years old now, and I'll be a 60-year-old man with a gray beard, and I'll probably still be rocking the backwards cap. Like that will probably always be my look. Um, Someone, and it's funny because you said childish. Someone said that one day. It was very sophomoric. Like that I wear my hat backwards. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. It's what I like to do. So,
Yeah, the hat I'm not
whatever.
knocking at all. It's
Yeah,
just
whatever.
my eyebrows pierced at 40. You know what I mean? Like I'm cool on the piercings, but the
Yeah.
hat, backwards hat, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm rocking that. I'm gonna rock that until I'm dead. It's fine.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Here's an interesting one because I don't know how you necessarily. Again, this is completely off topic of documentaries, films, and cigars and other stuff. So we talked about. But would you rather attend a live concert or a live sporting event of your choice?
Ooh, that's tough. I love that's tough. I love baseball. So I would love to watch baseball live. It's neck and neck because I love concerts and I love live comedy shows. So I do a lot of both. I don't have an answer for that.
Who's your
I love them
baseball
both
team?
live. The Red Sox, funny enough.
Are you fuck? How have we not talked
Yeah,
about this? That's my team.
we did in 2020.
Okay. Okay.
We
Well,
talked about it briefly. Yeah.
okay. We need to dive more into that. Okay. That's the
Yeah.
next time you're on. Okay, cool. Fantastic.
But
Uh
I will say this: Steve hates sports, all sports, which I used to be as well until I got into baseball. But he loves live music, live comedy. So he and I are similar in that aspect. But when it comes to sports, he'll come with me to sporting events, but he fucking hates it.
he fucking hates. What
Yeah.
what's the last concert you went to?
The last concert I went to was Little Big, which is a Russian band, a Russian like funny what's it called, satire group, but they're called Little Big, and they are fucking fantastic.
Oh, that's cool.
The show was
That's
amazing.
random.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And I'm gonna see them again. They're coming back in a few months. I'm gonna see them again. They're fucking amazing.
That's
Little
cool.
Big, check them out.
Nice.
Yeah,
I will. I'm not familiar with it, so that's awesome. Russian
yeah.
satire group. Cool. Well, that's a this or that segment. Let's move on to got a couple more here for you, Jesse. We can conclude tonight's interview. But again, I
Sure.
really appreciate this conversation. A lot of fun here at the
Of
end.
course.
The whole time, the whole night. So this is our Everybody Eats segment, which is brought to you by Pastania Cigars. If you always make sure that your servant's towel is bigger than your appetite, everybody will always get theirs. Pastania Cigars is more than just great cigars made by cool people. They embody an attitude of gratitude and grit. With Pastania, everybody eats. So, there's 30 versions of this question, Jesse. I thought this would be an interesting one with the two, so I'm changing it up because I had one picked out for when we thought Steve was going to be able to join us tonight. Again, he's here with us in spirit. We miss him a great deal, and we wish him all the best. But what is your best experience of eating with other people?
Uh, you know what? I'm gonna say it's not even actually eating; it's coffee. Having coffee with cigar makers. Honestly, I mean, it's not even the fact that we're involved with the cigar industry. It's sharing that a shot of espresso or Cuban coffee, which I fucking hate Cuban coffee. I hate it.
Oh, really?
But
Okay.
yes, because it's burnt coffee with way too much sugar. It's a shot of espresso with way too much sugar, and it's all garbage. But having that with manufacturers before we shoot interviews was my favorite experience ever. It's a couple of hours before we even turn the cameras on, and it's just bullshitting the same way we're doing right now with the podcast. It's just bullshitting with people, and having that shot of espresso is my favorite interaction I've ever had involving food or beverage. Period.
Nice.
In my entire life.
Interesting. No one's ever brought up drinks during this segment. That's cool. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have to imagine that'd be pretty awesome.
We do that more often than we do food. Drinks like alcohol or coffee, we'll do that more often than we do, for myself specifically, more often than we do a meal with someone interesting, and I love that more than anything.
Mm, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. Um, I think that coffee is one of those things that comes very close to cigars. Because I think when you grab drinks with somebody, like cocktails or spirits and stuff, like they have the ability to get there, but like it's not the same as sharing a cup of coffee with somebody or sharing a cigar with somebody, like smoking, having
Exactly.
like having conversation. So I'm with you on that. That makes a lot of sense to me because I think
Well, to
there's
that story, to that to just a real quick tangent. with Carlito Fuente when we shot his interview, which was in the original movie. We also shot an interview with him for the JC Newman Cigar Company, but originally we met with him at 9 in the morning, and we had coffee, we had lunch, we had dinner. We didn't start filming with him until 9:30 p.m. because he wanted to have meals, he wanted to have beverages with us, and to get to know us before he even was comfortable with us turning on the camera. So for us, relationally, it's always going to be over a cup of coffee or over a beverage of some sort.
Interesting.
And so that for us is more impactful.
Do you remember any? Did you remember any of the meals of what you shared with him? Just curious. I'm just putting you on the
No,
spot.
I don't remember. I don't remember anything we ate with him at all. I remember having coffee in the morning, and then I remember shooting the interview at night with a couple of glasses of rum.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's just getting to know each other over the day. It was literally just before we even turn on the cameras. Yo, sit down and let's have a couple shots of espresso. Let's talk a little bit, and that turned into a full day, 12-hour day of just hanging out.
I don't want to veer too far into this tangent though, but like again, with your own proclivity to Nicaraguan cigars and him being one of the quintessential Dominican cigar makers with Dominican tobacco, what was your initial impression of those cigars? Like what was different about them? What did you enjoy about them as opposed to like your love for Nicaragua? Because not
I
Nicaraguan
mean,
cigars.
I love a good cigar. The complexity of a good cigar is going to be fantastic for us. It's going to be bar none over anything we smoke. It's the conversations you have over any cigar. It could be a dog shit cigar, but you're having it with incredible people that are interesting people. It's going to make this. It's going to elevate the cigar every time. Norm Macdonald had a hilarious joke about having a hot dog, or not Norm Macdonald. Sorry, it was Chris Rock. You can have an interesting meal or a great meal with a boring person, or you can have a hot dog with an interesting person. The hot dog is going to be more interesting. It's going to be the one you remember.
Right.
So for us, the tobacco is a gateway to the conversation.
Okay.
So yes, I slightly prefer Nicaraguan tobacco over Dominican tobacco, slightly. But at the end of the day, a good cigar with an interesting person is going to be more influential than anything ever.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So this one might be interesting. This next segment might be interesting. That was our Postania segment. Everybody Eats, sponsored by Postania Cigars. With Postania, everybody eats. So this next one's going to be interesting, Jesse, because again, most of your entire livelihood is about being around other people. you know.
Yeah.
So this is our asylum moment of refuge. So refuge is more than just a physical place. It can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for asylum cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So the point of this segment here, Jesse, is to talk about a moment that you had with just a cigar. We both work in the cigar industry. Cigar industry is very communal. It's about sharing cigars, as we just talked about a few seconds ago, with people. Conversation, right? That's the center point of what this is all about. It's the center point of tonight, your and I's conversation. But every once in a while, we get to have that opportunity where it's just us and a cigar. It could be celebrating something. It could be just a moment of solitude or reflection. You've probably had a few of those. But what's one that comes to mind? And if you can remember, what were you smoking and what was the moment about?
100%. Immediately, the Dom Pepin Blue 10-year anniversary comes to mind. It was the first time I bought a house. So immediately when the house closed, it was myself, Steve, and one other friend of ours smoking outside of my office that I shared with Steve. We were drinking Blanton's bourbon, which at the time wasn't a big deal. Now it's more expensive.
No, it sounds fucking awesome. It's like, whoa, Blanton's. Oh man.
Yeah, it was $46 a bottle at the time at Costco. It was very easy to get at the time. We had a Dom Pepin Blue. We were drinking out of plastic cups, smoking a Dom Pepin Blue in our office chairs in the parking lot of our office, and that was the most memorable cigar I've ever had. And
Oh
it's
wow.
still, yeah, it still stands out more than any cigar. And I've had that cigar many times since, and it wasn't as great as that day. So it was definitely the fellowship, the celebration, all of that kind of played into the fact that we were enjoying that moment the most.
Awesome. So would you say that that is your favorite cigar, like ever that you've smoked?
It's the most memorable cigar I've smoked. It's not my favorite cigar, but it's the most memorable one. Yes.
Do you have a favorite
I
cigar?
don't. I don't know that.
Okay.
I
Yeah, me
don't
too.
know that answer.
It's
Yeah.
it's such a hard question. Sean from our chat asked me to ask you about it, and it's one of those cliche questions that we as cigar smokers, and Sean, you know better than that. You get asked that question all the time. You can't answer that question, uh, but it's such a it's so God, it's such a I get asked that by so many people, so many laymen or people who aren't in the industry, and they find out I'm a cigar. I'm like, hey, what's your favorite cigar? It's like, oh, dude, you're like asking me to pick one of like pick my favorite kid, you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, it's just it's unbelievably difficult. I've always said that my quest is to find the perfect cigar for the moment that I'm in.
Yeah.
And
I've had shitty cigars. Like I said, I've had shitty cigars that
yes,
I would never smoke again with incredibly interesting people. And that moment is so incredible versus, like the fact that I've had just a really great cigar by myself on my patio and just really enjoyed it. And then those are the cigars I'll buy boxes of that I really love. But at the same time, I've had crappy cigars that I'll never smoke again. But the fact that it was with interesting people is so incredible.
I love I haven't told this story on the show, but this was during COVID, and like a couple of people got together for like a herf, and it was like me and some friends of mine in the industry, and we're all getting together and we're smoking and stuff. And I lit up one cigar and it was not good, and I lit up a second one and it was not good, and I went five deep, and it just what I could not fucking find a cigar that like it was so
Yeah,
terrible. And it was like it's such an awful experience smoking wise, but I wouldn't trade that experience for anything else in the world because I was just with great people and we were
exactly.
still smoking, and it was just like a great conversation, and I remember it to this day, even though God, I couldn't find a cigar, and I was like at the fifth one I was like fuck it, I'm not gonna go in there, I'm not gonna go get a sixth one, I'm just not doing it. I'm just gonna just enjoy the conversation for what it is. um
Exactly.
yeah, so that was our asylum moment for this week. Refuge is more than just a physical place. It can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for asylum cigars, so light up an asylum and choose your refuge. So, well, Jesse, believe it or not, that brings us to our last question of the evening, and I can't thank you enough for joining me again. Your second time on my show. Really enjoy the time that we've spent together on these shows and off as well. Again, can't thank you enough for your time. Know how busy you are. These projects are taking up a lot of your time, and for you to make some time for me on a Sunday evening is just it's just fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity
My
to speak.
pleasure, man. It's my pleasure.
Again, Steve couldn't be with us tonight, but we wish him all the best. He's here with us. He's with us in spirit, and if it hadn't been for something that took him away from it, he would be here. And I wish Steve all the best, and I can't wait to have you both guys back on and to talk more about
Of
some of these
course.
next chapters that are coming in the next months and years. This is really exciting. This is really really exciting
Of
for the
course.
industry. Good stuff. So, um,
Thank you.
this is our Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust curveball segments. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Saka has been knocking them out of the park. 8 consecutive years, 8 years in a row that he's made the consensus top three. Will he make it 9? We'll find out this week. Yes, we will find out this week if Steve Saka has made the consensus top three for a ninth year in a row. I think he's got a good shot. In fact, I think it's a given, but we'll see what happens. But congratulations to our good friend Steve for all he's accomplished. So, Jesse, this question is for you. As a documentarian, is there a topic that comes to mind that no amount of money or influence or power of suggestion would ever allow you to do a documentary on? Any topic?
Ooh, no, no, not a single one. There's the white elephant for us that we'd love to do and have not gotten to yet, but it's in the works. I think we would love to do it.
Okay.
It's el paquete, which is the packet in Spanish, and it's how Cuba got its information for a while there. It's a thumb drive with information, like whatever was popular in the United States that week, TV shows, YouTube videos, whatever was the most popular, they would get downloaded onto a thumb drive, get sent into Cuba, and that would get distributed across Cuba. And that's how they got their information. And that's the white whale that we are chasing. We would love to tell that story.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's not impossible, but it's been tough to get to.
Interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We had a question in the chat, given that you and Steve are Romanian, have you guys ever considered doing a documentary on Vlad the Impaler?
No. That story's been told. It's Dracula. It's been bastardized. My daughter's 13. She's done book reports on Vlad the Impaler because she knows the Dracula story. So for her, it's interesting, and for her school, her classmates, it's interesting. But Vlad the Impaler is a story that's been told many, many times, and there's nothing else to tell there. Yeah,
but you guys could probably tell it differently and do it better. I'm not a fan of Dracula films. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Dracula films. That's a hot take. I know. I'm really not.
Steve and I have both been to the castle.
Oh, that's cool.
As kids, we both visited the castle. It's in Romania. It's in Transylvania. It's in Romania. Vlad Tepes is who we know him as, Vlad the Impaler in English. I have a Vlad the Impaler tattoo on my leg.
Oh shit! Okay, that's all right.
Yeah,
all right.
Nice. It's a story we know very well, but we have not considered telling it.
That's funny
on film.
Yeah, I think that's a hot take. I've just never, man. The vampire craze is such a thing, man. It was such a huge fad. With the Stephanie March, the films, the Twilight things, and in Vampire Diaries and stuff. I still think that the best vampire thing ever done is still Interview with the Vampire and Anne Rice, and that was fucking 30 years ago at this point.
Yeah. It's such a bastardized story from what really took place.
Of course.
But it's a fun, it's fun, Twilight's fun and all, but it's not what really happened.
Nice. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, that was our Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust curveball segment, and that concludes our evening tonight. Jesse, I can't thank you enough for tonight. What a fun conversation it's been, and
so fun.
Unbelievable work that you and Steve and Serge are doing. We're gonna have to get Serge on this because I really want to talk about the music. I had a great conversation with him at PCA this past summer about it, and I love the soundtrack of the original documentary. I think that was he made some brilliant choices, and you guys did such a great job of piecing it together and everything. Is there a similar? I confession. I saw the edited episode for JC Newman at PCA, but I haven't seen it since yet. I was going to do that after our conversation, actually. But is there a soundtrack similar, or is it pretty unique in its own right?
It's going to be unique. It's going to be different this time around. In fact, all three of us are planning on being at PCA in March. So we would love, if you're down for it, let's do a live interview at PCA.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all three of us. And that way we can do one in person versus over Zoom, and we can talk about all these aspects. But yeah, we're planning, we're interviewing with different composers currently, and we're working on Serge is working on an original soundtrack for the next film.
Absolutely. Nice, man. That would be fantastic. Yes, I would love the opportunity to, and I know Coop and the rest of our team that go to the trade show would love to have that conversation. So we'll definitely make some time and figure that out. So that'll be great. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to the new Tatuaje episode, and looking and watching Pete be uncomfortable hearing himself talk about himself. That's gonna be a highlight for me. Personally, this all the love, Steve. All the love, Pete, because you're fantastic, and I love you, and you know it. So anyway, Jesse, thank you so much for tonight. It's just like I said, it was an absolute blast, and I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm just thrilled that you could be a part of this episode tonight, and and I love what you guys are doing. So congratulations on a job well done so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, to our audience, we thank you so much as well. We do appreciate y'all staying up late for us. You know, it's late for us, everybody in Central and East Coast time. Jesse's about to go have dinner since he lives on the West Coast, so that's going to be nice. But for everyone out there, just check us out on Facebook Live every Sunday night, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. You can check us out live on Facebook. Our Facebook channel, of course, is ELOSOFUMAR. That's where you're watching it right now. Hit the like button. If you want to check us out later on YouTube, you can hit the ELOSOFUMAR channel. Be sure to hit the subscribe button there. But if you're listening to us on podcasts, wherever you happen to listen to podcasts, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review. If you already are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit unsubscribe, but don't forget to hit resubscribe because it actually really helps my numbers. And that's the only reason Jesse agreed to appear tonight was how great my metrics are. Not true at all. But do that because it actually really does help my number. So I really do appreciate that, everybody. Keep the likes, shares, and comments coming. It's why we do what we do, and we're continuing to have great conversations for the rest of the year. Got some great takes planned and coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun for the next few weeks, and we're on our road to PCA 2024, which will be in March this year. So excited. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks, Jesse. I'm really excited about that.
Yes, sir.
I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So for everyone out there, again, this was our 278th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star Studio of Azle, Texas. I'm Barry Duplessis as always. He's Jesse Mariut. And guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.
Good.